So we've all heard the idea that the reason why Hillary Clinton lost in 2016 is because those leftist, communist, progressives who voted for Bernie Sanders voted for Donald Trump. And because of that, Hillary Clinton lost and Donald Trump became president. And we've all seen the articles that state that 10% of Bernie Sanders' primary voters ended up voting for Donald Trump, which is why Bernie Sanders is someone who shouldn't be trusted, and all of this argument from the center right in American politics that usually doesn't even come up with much analysis beyond the true statement that 10% of Sanders voters voted for Donald Trump in 2016. That is correct, but there's no context to this data. Is 10% a high number? Is it a low number? Before we go get the raw data for this, let's start by looking at the historical results. Here's the 1996 presidential election. They had this really nice detail. I'm like, oh, we find liberal Democrats were the ones who voted the most for Hillary Clinton. We find that people at the extremes are more likely to vote for their candidate. Now, unfortunately, since 96, they haven't included this question in the poll, and I believe that is a major loss for American political science. I would like to know, when looking at the swing voters, one way to the other, I would like to know, are they, because we get this narrative nowadays, is it the left or the right who is deciding not to vote for these people? And if we look at 2000, we can look at a little more at the exit polls for this year, and we find that liberals vote Democrat, conservatives vote Republican, Democrats vote Democrat, Republicans vote Republican. We do find about 10%. Oh, look, it's the same number, 10% of Democrats vote Republican in the general in 2000, and we find this in pretty much every presidential election to the present date. For people who self-identify as a Democrat or a Republican, around 10% of them will always vote for the other party in the general election. And this is consistent, which is interesting because this is also what we find with Bernie Sanders voters. About 10% will flip in the general election. So my first inclination, we look at 2012. We are going to find, again, 10, 7%, 6% again. The swing voter is rare, but consistently around 10%. But this says that 10% is about what we should be in line. But the problem with the 10% of Sanders voters numbers doesn't ask us what percentage of Hillary Clinton voters voted for the other, voted for Donald Trump, and it doesn't ask us what are the characteristics of that voter. Now, first, before I go further, I want to explain that the narrative I hear online is saying that it's the people on the fringes, the progressives who will vote for Sanders in the primary, Trump in the general, and Hillary Clinton voters tend to stick with the party line. This is the narrative we hear. I'm not going to get into more recent elections. 24 is a basket case. But unfortunately, Harvard does the CCES survey every election. And this gives us really good granular data with raw information, with lots of questions that we can then determine, okay, what are the characteristics of the Clinton voters who don't vote for Clinton in the general? What the Sanders voters who didn't vote for Sanders in the general election? You didn't vote for Clinton in the general election. With this information, we can now determine what are the characteristics of those voters. It's from Harvard, it's legitimate, gives us a lot more information than your standard exit poll. While this is very useful information, it's not detailed enough to come with the types of conclusions people want to. CCES, however, does have that information. I read the guide, got the information I need, and I downloaded it and loaded it up in the Jupyter Notebook here. So, to start with, the first piece of information I want to look at is this table. So this is looking at who did you vote for in the primary on the left, Democrat or Republican, who did you vote for in the general on the right. Unsurprisingly, the largest voters are Hillary Clinton and Trump to Trump. The largest group are Sanders to Clinton voters. And then you have Republicans. Then you have, now we're getting to pretty small numbers of voters overall. Then you have Bernie Stein, I'm not sure, and then Donald Trump. And then Sanders Johnson. But, okay, so the Clinton-Trump voters do exist, but they are pretty rare. We do find that, yes, the Sanders-Trump voters are more common than the Clinton-Trump voters. They are also, and the Donald Trump-Hillary Clinton voter exists, but is about as common as the Clinton-Trump voter. So, I want to know, what are the factors that go into a Sanders-Trump voter? So I said, we can then look in more detail and ask, for that Sanders-Clinton voter, who did they vote for in general in 2016? Okay, unsurprisingly, our three largest groups are Clinton, Obama, Clinton, Romney, Trump, and Obama, Sanders, Clinton. No surprise. Then you have some standard Republicans. Your Obama, Trump voters are your next most common group. So there were cases of voters who used to vote for Obama who then went to Trump. You have your Obama Sanders voters. Next, most of them didn't go for Clinton, went to Jill Stein or weren't sure. But here you go. Here are your first Sanders-Trump swing is a Romney Sanders-Trump. It's an 290 out of 589. So roughly half of the Sanders-Trump voters weren't even Democrats. They weren't even progressive. Sanders was polling voters from, so about 5% of Sanders voters, from what I'm reading here, were actually people who voted for Romney in 2016. And so, what this says is that Sanders was polling Republicans to vote for someone in the Democratic caucus. Okay, that's very interesting, because what I hear online and from the media is saying that, if we vote for Clinton, Harris, or Biden, they're going to start bringing in Republican voters. This is not true. According to the CCES survey, the candidate who was most likely to pull in Republicans for swing voters was Bernie Sanders, not Hillary Clinton. There are some Romney Clinton voters, 185 in the survey out of, 20,000, over 20,000. They're very rare. But the candidate who really was able to pull voters in was Bernie Sanders, 290 versus 185. So about 50% more than Clinton pulled in based on the survey data. So what this data shows is that going a little more to the left can actually, according to this data, end up being more successful in pulling Republicans into the coalition, which says that centrist candidates are not good at that. There's some even more detail. We're also asking them, what is your ideology? So unsurprisingly, Obama, Clinton voters are liberal or middle on the roads. Romney, Trump are conservative. More liberals for Clinton and Obama. Your Sanders, Obama, Sanders, Clinton voters are liberal. No surprise. But we now want to find our Romney, Sanders, Clinton voters. Romney, Sanders, Clinton. Well, what we can do here is let me, I think I already pulled this in. Here's some basic data. I'll make that data. But we see there's a lot of data here. Bernie Sanders voters mostly went to Hillary Clinton. As we see, at least half of most of the Sanders Trump voters were Republicans anyways. They were people who voted for Romney. Now I want to grab this data frame and I want to say, alright, so this is a lot of information. I want to filter this down and say DF oh, we want Bernie Sanders. Oop. Why do you not like that? Oh, right. Alright, so unsurprisingly, middle of the road. So this is what we're having here. I don't need this column, because they're all Sanders anyways. So most Sanders voters, oh wow, almost all of them were Obama, were liberal, and most of them went to Clinton. You had middle of the road, Sanders, Romney, Sanders, Trump voters, and some conservative, but these are getting pretty rare. Now let me do another modification here, go down to Hillary Clinton. And middle of the road and somewhat liberal. Okay. But again, very rare. So that's pretty much what I found. Bernie Sanders was more effective at pulling in Republicans into his primary, but those Republicans who voted for Sanders in the primary in 16 did not continue to support Sanders in the general election. This is according to hard survey data from Harvard. I have not seen really any articles or studies that go into as much detail as this. But the long story short is the idea that progressives are going to vote for Sanders and then have a hissy fit and then vote for Trump is a myth. Not to say it's completely unheard of, but it's clearly not enough to swing an election. Sanders was more than Clinton able to bring Republicans into his campaign in 2016, and as a result, some of those voters who voted for him in 16 did not choose to vote for Clinton in the general. So, if you want to bring swing voters over, I guess you have to go progressive. At least that's what the survey data is showing from Harvard. So, yeah, that's what you need to do in order to bring Republicans to vote for Democrats.